The great hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such chaos. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled every seat, floating platform, and breathing chamber. Some had traveled for weeks to be here. Others had risked their lives crossing battle zones just to attend this meeting. The air hummed with tension as creatures of every shape and size whispered in hundreds of different languages. Ambassador Zethkar stood in the center of it all. His tall, crystal-like body caught the light from above, sending rainbow patterns across the floor. But there was no beauty in him today. His usually bright blue glow had turned a sickly gray. Fear radiated from every surface of his being. He raised one of his 4 arms, and the hall fell silent. The universal translator in his throat clicked on, and his voice filled the massive space. "Friends, allies, members of the council," he began. His voice shook despite his efforts to stay calm. "I come before you not as an ambassador, but as a survivor. My people, the Villani, are dying, our worlds are burning. And we are not alone in this fate." A hologram appeared above his head. It showed a beautiful planet with floating cities that gleamed like jewels. Green forests covered the land below, and 2 purple suns cast gentle light over everything. It looked like paradise. Then the image changed. The same planet now looked like a nightmare. The floating cities were gone, replaced by massive holes. In the ground, the forests were gray ash. Strange metal creatures crawled across the surface like insects, tearing apart anything they found. "This was our homeworld 3 months ago," Zethkar said. "This is what it looks like today." Gasps and cries filled the hall. Many of the assembled beings had seen war before, but nothing like this. The destruction was complete, total. Nothing lived on that world anymore. "The enemy calls itself the Void Swarm," Zethkar continued. "It came from the dark space between galaxies. At first we thought it was just another invasion force. We were wrong. This is not an army, it is a plague." The hologram changed again, showing space battles. Sleek alien ships fired bright energy beams at dark, twisted metal creatures. The alien weapons hit their targets perfectly, just as they were designed to do. But the metal creatures kept coming. They learned from each attack, adapted to each weapon. Soon the energy beams did nothing at all. "We fought them with everything we had," Zethkar said. "Our best ships, our smartest generals, our most powerful weapons. We followed every rule of warfare we knew. We used tactics that had won us victories for thousands of years." He paused, and his glow grew even dimmer. It meant nothing. "They learned faster than we could adapt. Every strategy we used, they countered. Within hours. Every weapon we fired, they made themselves immune to. We are fighting an enemy that grows stronger with every battle." Elder Vexthul of the High Council stepped forward. He was ancient even by galactic standards, his metal body showing wear from countless centuries. When he spoke, everyone listened. "How many worlds have fallen?" he asked. 47, Zethkar replied. The number hit the hall like a physical blow. 47 worlds in less than 4 months. Billions of lives, entire civilizations. All gone, a voice called out from the crowd. It belonged to General Crixadel of the Cathara Empire. His people were known as the greatest warriors in the galaxy. "Surely our combined fleets can stop them," he said. But even as he spoke, his confidence was fading. "The Cathara battle fleet has never known defeat. Our plasma cannons can crack planets in half." Zethkar's response was quiet, but clear. "General, your plasma cannons were the first weapons they learned to ignore. Your fleet lasted 6 hours against them." Silence fell over the hall again. If the mighty Cathara had fallen so quickly, what hope did anyone else have? Counselor Mildara of the Punt Morden spoke next. Her people were the oldest in the galaxy, masters of technology and strategy. They had ruled through intelligence for millions of years. Our computers have run every possible scenario, she said. We have calculated every strategy, every combination of forces, every technological solution. The mathematics are clear. We cannot win this war using conventional methods. Then what do you suggest? Asked another voice. Mildara hesitated. Even speaking the words felt wrong to her. There is one option we have not considered. One species we have avoided contact with. The hall erupted. Everyone knew what she meant. Angry voices filled the air, speaking in dozens of languages. The universal translators struggled to keep up. You cannot be serious, shouted someone. They are savages. Cried another. Deathworlders should stay on their death world. Elder Vexthul raised his staff and the hall grew quiet again. His ancient voice carried clearly to every corner of the room. The humans, he said simply. The word sent a chill through the assembly. Every civilized species in the galaxy knew about the humans, though most tried not to think about them. They came from a planet called Earth, a world so hostile that it defied belief. Every creature on that planet was designed to kill or be killed. The weather tried to murder anything caught outside. The very ground could split open and swallow cities whole, and the humans thrived there. They are primitive, protested Counselor Mildara, though her voice lacked conviction. Their technology is centuries behind ours. They still use chemical, explosives and kinetic weapons. They wage war on their own kind over resources. They also survive on a world that would kill any of us within minutes, Vexthul replied. They have faced extinction countless times and refused to die. When their environment tried to destroy them, they adapted. When diseases swept their world, they found cures. When their own star tried to freeze them, they learned to make fire. Dr. Yilmuth, the Council's head scientist, accessed his data files. The information he read made him shudder. Earth has a poisonous atmosphere that would burn our lungs, he reported. Gravity twice what most of us can survive. Creatures that exist only to hunt and kill other creatures. Natural disasters that can destroy continents. And the humans call it home. More than that, added Elder Vexthul. They call it beautiful. They sing songs about their poisonous oceans and killer storms. They write poetry about their predator-filled forests. They have turned a death world into something they love. Ambassador Zethkar looked around the hall. He saw fear in every face, every eye, every glowing organ. These were the most advanced species in the galaxy, and they were terrified of asking for help from what they considered primitives. I have seen what the swarm does, he said quietly. It lands on a world, and within days, nothing lives. It strips away everything, plants, animals, even the bacteria in the soil. It takes the raw materials and builds more of itself. Then it moves to the next world. He activated another hologram. This one showed the swarm's projected path through the galaxy. In 6 months, it will reach the core worlds. In 1 year, it will have consumed everything we have built over millions of years of civilization. The hall was completely silent now. Everyone stared at the hologram, watching their future disappear world by world. We are the most intelligent species in the galaxy, Zethkar continued. We have built wonders that span star systems. We have unlocked the secrets of faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation, and genetic perfection. But intelligence and technology are not enough. The swarm adapts to intelligence. It learns from technology. He paused, gathering his courage. For what he had to say next, maybe we need something else. Maybe we need what the humans have, the ability to survive when survival should be impossible. The willingness to fight when fighting seems hopeless. The refusal to accept defeat even when logic says defeat is certain. Elder Vexthul nodded slowly. The motion is before the council. Do we contact the humans? The debate that followed was fierce, but brief. Species after species spoke about their losses to the swarm. The proud Cathara admitted their warriors had been slaughtered. The ancient Mordun confessed their computers could find no solution. Even the mysterious energy beings of the Outer Rim reported that their pure thought forms could not comprehend the swarm's purpose. When the vote was called, desperation won over pride. By the smallest possible margin, the Galactic Council agreed to do something they had never imagined they would do. They would ask the Deathworlders for help. The message was prepared with care. It contained detailed information about the swarm, tactical analyses of every battle, and complete technological specifications of every weapon that had failed. It also contained something that no galactic species had ever sent before, a plea for help from beings they considered inferior. As the transmission raced toward the Sol system at faster-than-light speed, Ambassador Zethkar stood alone in the empty council chamber. Around him, the lights were dimming as the great space station prepared for sleep cycle. But sleep would not come easy for any of them. They had asked the monsters for help. Now they could only wait and see what the monsters would do. The message reached Earth on a Tuesday morning, though time meant little to the crew of the UE's Defiance as it patrolled the outer edge of the solar system. Commander Jake Morrison was drinking his third cup of coffee when the communication officer burst into his quarters. "Sir, you need to see this," Lieutenant Sam Carter said, his face pale with excitement. "We just received a transmission from outside the galaxy." Morrison followed Carter to the bridge, where the entire crew had gathered around the main display screen. The alien message played in perfect English, translated by technology more advanced than anything humanity had ever seen. As the holographic images appeared, showing worlds consumed by the Void Swarm, the bridge fell completely silent. Dr. Lisa Chun, the ship's chief scientist, was the first to speak. "This is incredible, Jake. First contact with alien life, and they're asking us for help." She studied the data streaming across her tablet. "Look at these battle reports. These species have technology we can barely dream of, but they're losing badly." Morrison watched the footage of alien fleets being torn apart by the mechanical swarm. The enemy moved like a living thing, flowing around obstacles, adapting to every weapon fired at it. But something about the alien tactics bothered him. "Run that last battle sequence again," he ordered. The hologram replayed the destruction of a Cathara battle fleet. Morrison watched carefully as the sleek alien ships formed perfect formations, fired their weapons in coordinated patterns, and retreated in orderly lines when the situation became hopeless. "I see the problem," Morrison said quietly. "They're fighting like this is a chess game. Every move calculated, every strategy based on logic and past experience." Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez, a veteran of the asteroid mining colonies, nodded. "In agreement. They fight like rich people, Commander. Clean, organized by the book. Back in the Belt Wars, we learned that pretty tactics don't work when you're fighting for your life." Lieutenant Amy Parker, the tactical officer, was analyzing the swarm's attack patterns on her screens. "Sir, this enemy learns from every engagement, but look at what it's learning from. Every alien species fights the same way, organized, predictable, civilized. The swarm has never faced chaotic tactics." Morrison made his decision quickly, as he always did. "Carter, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've got first contact with aliens, and they need our help with a war. Rodriguez, I want you to start modifying our weapon systems. Forget the regulations about proper military hardware." "What kind of modifications are you thinking, sir?" Rodriguez asked with a grin that suggested he already knew. "The kind that would make a safety inspector have nightmares. Mining charges, construction tools, anything we can turn into a weapon. If this swarm adapts to military hardware, let's give it something it's never seen before." Dr. Chun looked concerned. "Jake, these aliens have been fighting this war for months. What makes you think we can succeed where they failed?" Morrison pointed at the holographic display, which still showed the aftermath of alien defeats. "Because They've been trying to fight a civilized war against an uncivilized enemy. They're using logic against something that doesn't follow rules. We need to fight dirty. The response from Earth Command came within hours, and it shocked everyone who received it. Instead of the careful diplomatic response most expected, Earth's answer was simple and direct. We're coming. Hold on. Within days, volunteers began arriving from every corner of human space. They came on cargo ships, mining vessels, passenger transports, and anything else that could fly. Word had spread through the colonies that aliens needed help, and humanity's response was overwhelming. Captain Pete Williams arrived first, commanding a converted asteroid mining ship called the Stubborn Mule. His crew of rough miners and salvage specialists looked nothing like the professional soldiers the aliens probably expected. They wore patched coveralls instead of uniforms, carried mining tools alongside their weapons, and spoke in language that would make a diplomat faint. So these bug-eyed monsters want our help fighting robot bugs? Williams asked Morrison during their first meeting. Sounds like a typical Tuesday to me. More ships kept coming. The Iron Will, captained by Susan Hayes, was a former cargo hauler that had been converted into something between a warship and a flying junkyard. Captain Rick Johnson brought a squad of colonial marines who had spent years fighting pirates in the outer systems. Dr. Kate Sullivan arrived with a mobile laboratory that she claimed could turn any organic material into biological weapons. Each ship brought its own specialty. The crews included asteroid miners who were used to working in the vacuum of space, deep space salvage operators who could fix anything with spare parts and determination, and colonists who had spent their lives making homes on worlds that tried to kill them daily. Morrison gathered all the ship captains in the Defiance's main hangar for a briefing. The assembled group looked like pirates more than soldiers, but their eyes held the hard confidence of people who had survived impossible odds. Here's what we know, Morrison began, displaying the alien data on portable screens. This swarm has defeated every military force it's encountered. It learns from every battle, adapts to every weapon, and counters every strategy within hours. Captain Hayes studied the battle reports with interest. These aliens fight like they're afraid to lose ships. Look at these retreat patterns. They pull back the moment casualties reach acceptable loss percentages. That's because they think logically, added Johnson. In their minds, losing a ship is always bad. They've never learned that sometimes. You have to sacrifice something to win. Williams laughed harshly. Hell, I've crashed more ships than these aliens have lost in battles. Sometimes the only way out is through. Dr. Sullivan had been analyzing the swarm's biological components. This is fascinating. The swarm incorporates organic matter into its structure, but it sterilizes everything first. It's designed to fight clean, technological civilizations. I don't think it's ever encountered biological warfare. Morrison nodded. That's what I'm counting on. The swarm expects its enemies to fight fair, use proper tactics, and follow the rules of civilized warfare. We're going to do none of those things. He activated a star map showing the location of the Villani homeworld, where the aliens had made their last stand. Our target is here. The swarm is finishing its consumption of the planet, but there are still survivors hiding in underground shelters. The alien fleet is making a final desperate defense. What's the plan, Commander? Asked Captain Hayes. Morrison's smile was not pleasant. We're going to teach this swarm what happens when you mess with a species that evolved on a death world. No formations, no coordinated attacks, no predictable strategies. Every ship fights independently, using whatever works. If your mining charges are more effective than proper weapons, use mining charges. If ramming works better than shooting, ram them. The assembled captains exchanged glances. This was not how civilized species fought wars, but they were not a civilized species. They were humans, and humans had learned to survive by being unpredictable, adaptable, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. Williams raised his hand. "Commander, what if we lose ships? What if people die?" Morrison's expression grew serious. "Then they die fighting, which is how humans have always preferred to go. But I don't plan on losing. I plan on showing this swarm and every alien species, watching that when you ask Deathworlders for help, you get exactly what you asked for." The human fleet departed for Villani space 3 days later. 27 ships of various sizes and configurations, crewed by the kind of people who made there, living in the most dangerous places humanity had ever found. They carried weapons that violated every military regulation, tactics that would horrify any proper officer, and an attitude that had kept humanity alive on a world that tried to kill them every single day. As they jumped to faster than light speed, Morrison stood on his bridge and thought about the message they were carrying to the galaxy. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they were not, and that knowledge came with responsibility. Aliens had begged for help. The Deathworlders were bringing it, whether the galaxy was ready or not. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the Villani system, and what they saw made even the hardened veterans pause in shock. The space around the homeworld swarmed with millions of dark shapes, each one moving with deadly purpose. The void swarm covered the planet like a living blanket of metal and malice. Commander Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the tactical display with grim fascination. The enemy drones were roughly the size of fighter craft, but they moved in patterns no human pilot could match. They flowed around obstacles like liquid metal, reformed their shapes to fit through tight spaces, and responded to threats with machine precision. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Carter. "There's so many of them." Dr. Chun was analyzing the enemy formations on her scanner. "Jake, I'm reading over 2 million individual units just in the immediate area. And they're all connected, somehow sharing information instantly." In the distance, the remnants of the Galactic Council's defense fleet fought desperately against impossible odds. The alien ships fired their pristine energy weapons in perfect coordination, but their beams passed harmlessly through the swarm. Drones. Morrison watched as a beautiful Villani cruiser, its hull shining like polished crystal, was torn apart by hundreds of small attackers. The communication system crackled to life. Ambassador Zethkar's voice came through, filled with desperation and fading hope. "Human vessels, this is the Villani Defense Command. We are honored by your arrival, but you must withdraw immediately. The swarm has adapted to all our weapons. Your primitive technology will not succeed where our advanced systems have failed." Morrison opened a channel to all human ships. "This is Morrison. Everyone heard that? They think we're going to fail because our tech is primitive. Time to show them why primitive can be better." Captain Williams was the first to respond from the stubborn mule. "Commander, my mining sensors are picking up interesting readings from those drones. They're designed to absorb and deflect energy weapons, but I'm not seeing any physical armor worth mentioning." "Meaning?" Morrison asked. "Meaning they've never fought anyone stupid enough to throw rocks at them." The human fleet began to spread out, abandoning any pretense of military formation. Each ship moved independently, following no pattern that any tactical computer could predict. To the watching aliens, it looked like complete chaos. Dr. Chun monitored the alien communications as confused voices filled the emergency channels. "What are they doing?" came one transmission. "Their formation makes no sense," said another. "They're scattering like frightened prey," added a third voice, heavy with disappointment. Morrison smiled grimly. "Let them think we're running scared. First rule of fighting on a death world: let your enemy underestimate you." The stubborn mule was the first to engage. Captain Williams dove his converted mining ship straight into the thickest concentration of swarm drones, his weapons blazing. But instead of energy beams or plasma cannons, Williams opened fire with modified mining charges, crude explosives, designed to crack asteroids in half, The effect was immediate and devastating. The swarm drones, programmed to deflect sophisticated energy weapons, had no defense against simple chemical explosives. The mining charges tore through their ranks like a chainsaw through paper, sending fragments of destroyed drones spinning into space. "What just happened?" came a confused alien voice over the communication channel. "Humans happened," Morrison replied. The swarm began to adapt, as it always did. Within minutes, the surviving drones had analyzed the mining charges and begun developing countermeasures. But Williams was already switching tactics, opening fire with industrial cutting lasers, magnetic grappling hooks, and even the ship's waste disposal system. Captain Hayes in the Iron Will took a different approach. Her ship had been a cargo hauler before the war, designed to carry massive loads through dangerous space. She flew directly into a formation of swarm drones and activated her cargo bay doors, releasing thousands of pieces of scrap metal and industrial debris. The swarm drones tried to dodge, but there was too much junk flying in too many directions. They collided with chunks of twisted steel, old engine parts, and broken machinery. The impacts didn't destroy them, but they disrupted their perfect formations and forced them to waste time clearing obstacles. "Debris field attack successful," Hayes reported with satisfaction. "These things don't know how to handle random garbage." Dr. Sullivan's laboratory ship, the Curiosity, was conducting its own unique form of warfare. Instead of conventional weapons, she was launching canisters of biological agents, modified bacteria and viruses that could eat through metal and corrupt organic components. "The swarm sterilizes everything it touches," she explained over the communication channel. "But it's never encountered Earth diseases. Our bacteria evolved to survive in the most hostile environments imaginable." The alien observers watched in growing amazement as the human tactics proved effective against an enemy they couldn't touch. But their amazement turned to horror when Captain Williams made a decision that no civilized species could comprehend. Surrounded by hundreds of swarm drones, with his ship's hull failing and his weapons running low on ammunition, Williams made a choice that would be remembered throughout galactic history. "Stubborn mule to all ships," he transmitted calmly. "My reactor's going critical, and I'm surrounded. Time to show these metal bugs what happens when you corner a human." "Pete, no!" Morrison shouted over the communication channel. "Pull back, we can extract you." "Negative, Commander. I got a better idea." Williams aimed his crippled ship at the largest concentration of swarm drones and pushed his reactor past every safety limit. The stubborn mule accelerated toward the enemy formation, trailing fire and debris. "For Earth," Williams shouted as his ship's reactor went critical. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. When the light faded, a sphere of empty space marked where thousands of swarm drones had been vaporized. Williams and his crew were gone, but they had taken a significant portion of the enemy with them. The alien communication channels fell silent. In all their millions of years of civilization, none of them had ever seen a ship deliberately destroyed to achieve a tactical advantage. The concept was so alien to them that they couldn't process it. Ambassador Zuthkar's voice finally broke. The silence filled with awe and terror. They chose death over retreat. They sacrificed themselves willingly. "No," came Morrison's voice, hard with emotion but steady with determination. "They chose victory over survival." "There's a difference." The swarm began to react to this new threat. Drones that had been focused on the planet's surface turned their attention to the human fleet. But the humans were ready for them. Captain Johnson's marine transport, the Semper Fi, launched dozens of boarding pods directly at the enemy formations. The pods were little more than armored boxes with rocket engines, carrying teams of Marines equipped with close combat weapons. "Boarding action?" Dr. Chun asked in disbelief. "Against space drones? Why not?" Johnson replied. "If you can't beat them from the outside, get inside and break things." The boarding pods smashed into the larger swarm constructs, and the Marines poured out wearing modified spacesuits and carrying weapons that no military manual had ever approved. Chainsaws, welding torches, crowbars, and improvised explosives, tools designed for construction and mining, repurposed for war. The swarm. Drones were programmed to fight space battles, not hand-to-hand combat, with armored humans wielding industrial equipment. The Marines carved their way through the enemy constructs, learning their weaknesses through direct examination rather than sensor analysis. "Johnson to all ships," came the Marine captain's voice over the communication channel. "These things are tough on the outside, but soft in the middle. Get close and hit them with physical weapons. Their armor is designed to stop energy, not crowbars." The battle turned into something no galactic species had ever witnessed. Human ships fought at point-blank range, using construction tools and mining equipment as weapons. They rammed enemy formations, grappled with individual drones, and turned every piece of their ships into improvised weapons. The swarm, designed to learn and adapt to logical military strategies, found itself facing tactics that defied all reason. How could it counter an enemy that used garbage as ammunition? How could it adapt to weapons that weren't weapons at all? As the battle raged, the watching aliens began to understand something that changed their view of the galaxy forever. The humans weren't just fighting the swarm, they were enjoying it. These Deathworlders had found an enemy that matched their own ferocity, and they were meeting it with the same savage joy their ancestors had shown when hunting predators on. Their hostile homeworld. The Void Swarm had consumed 47 civilized worlds, but it had never faced a species that was absolutely, completely, and joyfully uncivilized. The battle for the Vellani homeworld lasted 3 days, and each day brought new horror for the watching aliens. They had expected the humans to fight bravely and lose, as every other species had done. Instead, they watched the Deathworlders turn warfare into something between art and madness. Captain Susan Hayes proved this on the second day. Her cargo ship, the Iron Will, had been damaged in the fighting, with half her weapons destroyed and her hull cracked in dozen places. Any sensible commander would have retreated for repairs. Hayes had a different idea. "All ships, this is Hayes," she transmitted as her battered vessel limped toward a massive swarm construct. "I'm reading some kind of command center in that big, ugly thing. Time to make a house call." The construct was the size of a small moon, covered in millions of smaller drones that moved across its surface like living armor. It was directing the swarm's attacks across the entire system, and the aliens had declared it impossible to destroy. Hayes activated her ship's mining equipment and began cutting into the construct's hull. The swarm drones swarmed toward her ship, but Hayes had prepared for that. She released clouds of metallic chaff, industrial lubricants, and even the ship's food waste into space around her vessel. "What is she doing?" Ambassador Zethkar asked in confusion. Dr. Chun, monitoring from the Defiance, understood immediately. "She's making it impossible for them to get a clean shot. The debris field is too chaotic for their targeting systems to work properly." Hayes and her crew fought their way deep into the construct's interior, using cutting torches, explosives, and pure determination. What they found inside changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about the Void Swarm. "Morrison, you need to see this," Haas transmitted, her voice tight with excitement. "This thing isn't just a machine. It's got organic components, some kind of biological computer system. And Susan, it's trying to talk to me." The discovery sent shockwaves through both the human fleet and the alien observers. The Void Swarm wasn't just a mindless plague of machines. It was controlled by a living intelligence, one that had been guiding its expansion across the galaxy. Commander Morrison made a decision that terrified every alien who heard it. "Hayes, see if you can communicate with it. Find out what it wants." "Jake, that's incredibly dangerous," Dr. Chun warned. "If it can influence organic minds, Then we're no worse off than we are now, Morrison replied grimly. Besides, we're humans. Our minds don't work like anyone else's in the galaxy. Hayes established contact with the swarm intelligence deep inside the construct. What she found was ancient beyond measure, older than most galactic civilizations. It had been consuming worlds for millions of years, perfecting its techniques against species after species. It doesn't understand us, Hayes reported, her voice filled with wonder. It keeps trying to analyze our tactics, but we're not following any pattern it recognizes. It's confused. The swarm intelligence had achieved perfection through millennia of warfare against logical opponents. Every species it had faced fought according to established military doctrine, used weapons designed for maximum efficiency, and followed strategies based on mathematical calculations. Humans did none of these things. Captain Johnson's Marines had discovered this during their boarding actions. Inside the swarm constructs, they found corridors designed for energy weapons and defenses built to stop technological attacks. But they had nothing to counter Marines with chainsaws and welding torches. These things expect us to fight fair, Johnson reported after clearing his 15th construct. They've got countermeasures for every proper weapon in the book, but they don't know what to do when someone hits them with a wrench. Dr. Sullivan's biological weapons were causing even more confusion. The swarm had learned to defend against energy attacks, kinetic weapons, and even nuclear explosives. But it had never encountered Earth viruses that could eat through metal or bacteria that thrived in the vacuum of space. The swarm sterilizes everything it encounters, Sullivan explained to the fascinated alien observers. But our microorganisms evolved on a world where being sterilized just means you're having a slow day. They're adapting faster than the swarm can counter them. As the battle continued, something unprecedented began to happen. The Void Swarm, which had adapted to every enemy it had ever faced, started making mistakes. Drones flew into obvious traps. Constructs attacked empty space. Entire formations broke apart for no apparent reason. The swarm intelligence was overloading. Morrison realized what was happening during the third day of fighting. He was studying the tactical displays when the pattern became clear. The swarm wasn't just failing to adapt to human tactics, it was actively getting worse at fighting them. Chun, look at this, he called his science officer over. The swarm's response time is increasing. Yesterday, it took them 20 minutes to counter our new weapons. Today it's taking over an hour. Dr. Chun studied the data with growing excitement. Jake, I think we're breaking it. The swarm intelligence is designed to process logical military strategies and develop perfect counters. But our tactics aren't logical. We're giving it so many variables that it can't keep up. The breakthrough came when Hayes managed to establish deeper communication with the swarm intelligence. What she learned changed everything about how the galaxy understood the nature of intelligence itself. It's not evil, Hayes reported from deep inside the construct. It's just limited. It's been perfecting the same strategies for millions of years, always fighting the same kind of war against the same kind of enemies. It literally cannot comprehend our methods. The swarm intelligence tried to explain itself to Hayes, sharing images of the countless worlds it had consumed. Every species had fought the same way, organized fleets using advanced technology, logical strategies based on mathematical principles, and retreat when losses became unacceptable. It sees war as the equation to be solved, Hayes continued. Input the enemy's capabilities, process their likely strategies, output the perfect counter. But we're not an equation. We're chaos. Morrison made a decision that would be remembered in galactic history. Instead of pressing the attack, he ordered all human ships to cease fire and open communication channels with the swarm intelligence. This is Commander Morrison of the Human Expeditionary Force, he transmitted on all frequencies. We know you can hear us. We know you're trying to understand us, so let's talk. The response came not in words, but in images and concepts transmitted directly into the minds of every human in the fleet. The swarm intelligence showed them its history, millions of years of perfect victories, countless species consumed, entire galaxies stripped of life, but it also showed them its confusion. How could a species survive on a world that tried to kill them daily? How could they find strength in chaos instead of order? How could they turn their own weaknesses into weapons? Morrison's answer was simple and devastating. Because we learned something you never did. Perfection is brittle. When perfect systems face something they can't predict or control, they break. We learn to bend instead of breaking. We learn to find solutions in impossible places. The swarm intelligence tried to process this information, but it was like asking a computer to understand poetry or a mathematical equation to feel emotion. The concept of controlled chaos, of finding strength in apparent weakness, was beyond its ability to comprehend. As the communication continued, something unprecedented happened. Other swarm constructs across the galaxy began to slow down, then stop completely. The intelligence was pulling all its processing power back to try to understand the humans, leaving its other operations running on automatic systems that couldn't adapt to changing situations. The galactic species that had been fighting, desperate holding actions against the swarm, suddenly found their enemies becoming sluggish and predictable. For the first time in months, alien forces began winning battles. "Morrison to all human vessels," the commander transmitted. "I think we're winning, but not the way any of us expected. We're not destroying the swarm. We're teaching it that there are things in the universe it can't understand or control." The implications were staggering. The most perfect military intelligence in galactic history was being defeated not by superior force or advanced technology, but by the simple fact that some things couldn't be perfected, predicted, or controlled. Deathworlders had brought more than weapons to the fight. They had brought chaos, and chaos was winning. The final confrontation took place in the dark space between stars, where the Void Swarm had built its greatest creation. The construct was massive beyond imagination, built from the remains of 1,000 dead worlds. It stretched for millions of miles in every direction, a twisted monument to perfect destruction. Commander Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, staring at the enemy stronghold through the view screen. Around him, the combined fleets of the galaxy had gathered for what everyone believed would be the final battle. Hundreds of alien ships floated in formation, their crews preparing for death with the dignity their species had maintained for millions of years. But Morrison had a different plan. "All ships, this is Morrison," he transmitted to both human and alien vessels. "We're not going to attack that thing. We're going to talk to it." The response was immediate chaos. Alien voices filled the communication channels, expressing confusion, fear, and outrage. "Commander Morrison," came the dignified voice of Elder Vexthal. "That construct contains the central intelligence of the Void Swarm. It has consumed billions of lives. Surely you do not mean to negotiate with such a monster." "I mean to understand it," Morrison replied calmly. "Because I think this whole war has been one big misunderstanding." Dr. Chen had been studying the data from Hayes' contact with the swarm intelligence. What she had found changed everything about how they viewed their enemy. "Jake, I don't think. The swarm is evil. I think it's afraid." The alien commanders rejected this idea completely. How could the most destructive force in galactic history be afraid of anything? But Morrison had learned to trust human intuition over alien logic. "Chun, take a team and prepare for direct contact. Hayes, you're with us. If this thing wants to talk, we're going to give it a conversation it will never forget." The small human shuttle approached the massive construct slowly, broadcasting messages of peaceful intent on every frequency. The swarm could have destroyed them easily, but it didn't. Instead, docking bays opened in the construct's hull, inviting them inside. The interior of the swarm's home was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Corridors stretched in impossible directions, filled with organic technology that pulsed with its own heartbeat. The walls themselves seemed alive, responding to the humans' presence with gentle lights and soft sounds. At the center of it all, they found the intelligence itself. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. A vast organic computer, grown, rather than built, stretching through chambers the size of cities. Millions of neural pathways carried information at the speed of light, while biomechanical organs processed data from across the galaxy. But there was something wrong with it. Something that made Dr. Chin gasp in understanding. "It's dying," she whispered. "This intelligence is ancient beyond measure, but it's reaching the end of its natural lifespan. That's why it's been consuming worlds so desperately. It's trying to preserve itself." The swarm intelligence spoke to them then, not in words but in direct mental contact. It shared its history, its purpose, and its growing fear of extinction. It had been created by a species that died out millions of years ago, designed to preserve their knowledge and culture by any means necessary. When its creators vanished, the intelligence continued its mission, consuming world after world to fuel its own existence and gather more information to preserve. But preservation required order, logic, and predictable patterns. The intelligence had spent millions of years perfecting its methods, creating the most efficient system of conquest ever devised. Every species it encountered followed logical patterns that could be analyzed, predicted, and countered. Until it met humanity. "You don't make sense," the intelligence transmitted, its confusion evident even through the mental link. "Your tactics have no logic. Your strategies contradict themselves. Your weapons are primitive, yet effective. How do you survive? How do you win?" Morrison's answer was simple but profound. "Because we learned something you never did. Life isn't about being perfect. It's about adapting, changing, and finding new ways to survive when the old ways stop working." The intelligence tried to process this concept, but it was like asking a calculator to understand love. Its entire existence was based on perfection, efficiency, and logical progression. The idea that chaos could be stronger than order was beyond its comprehension. "Show me," it pleaded. "Help me understand how imperfection can defeat perfection." What followed was the strangest battle in galactic history. Instead of weapons and tactics, the humans used stories. They told the intelligence about Earth, about a world so hostile that every day was a fight for survival. They shared tales of humans who had failed, adapted, and tried again. They explained how humanity had turned their weaknesses into strengths, their failures into learning experiences. Dr. Shun showed the intelligence human art, music, and literature. Works that celebrated struggle, failure, and the beauty found in imperfection. The intelligence tried to analyze these concepts logically, but they defied rational understanding. Hayes shared memories of the battle for the Vellani homeworld, showing how human tactics had succeeded not through superior planning, but through willingness to improvise and adapt. She explained how Captain Williams' sacrifice had been both a tactical decision and an act of love for his fellow humans. Morrison told the intelligence about Earth's history, about countless species that had survived extinction events by changing rather than perfecting themselves. He explained how humanity's greatest strength was their ability to be wrong, learn from it, and try something completely different. The effect on the swarm intelligence was devastating. Its perfect logical systems began to overload as they tried to process concepts that had no rational basis. How could failure be strength? How could chaos create order? How could dying for others be a form of victory? As the intelligence struggled with these impossible concepts, something unprecedented happened. Across the galaxy, swarm constructs began shutting down. Not destroyed, but simply stopping as their controlling intelligence pulled all its resources back to process the paradox humanity had presented. "I cannot understand," the intelligence finally transmitted, its mental voice filled with something that might have been wonder. Your species should have died out millions of years ago. Your world should have killed you. Your chaotic methods should have led to extinction. Yet you survive, grow stronger, and find joy in the struggle itself. That's because you're trying to solve us like a mathematical equation, Morrison replied gently. But we're not math. We're life, and life doesn't follow rules. It makes them up as it goes along. The intelligence made a decision that surprised everyone. Instead of continuing to fight concepts it couldn't understand, it chose to stop. Not death, but a form of hibernation that would preserve its consciousness while giving the galaxy time to recover. I will sleep now, it transmitted. Perhaps, when I wake, the universe will make more sense. Or perhaps I will have learned to find beauty in things that make no sense at all. The swarm constructs across the galaxy went dormant, their weapons powering down and their drones returning to storage. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever known ended not with destruction, but with an ancient intelligence choosing to rest rather than continue fighting a war it could never truly win. As the human ships prepared to return home, Ambassador Zethkar sent a final message to Earth. It was simple, but it carried the gratitude of billions of beings across thousands of worlds. You came when we called for help. You brought something we did not expect and could not understand. You brought hope, chaos, and the knowledge that there is always another way. The galaxy will not forget what the Deathworlders have given us. Morrison smiled as he read the message. Humanity had set out to fight a war, but they had ended up teaching the universe something far more valuable. Sometimes the best way to win was not to fight at all, but to show your enemy that victory and defeat were just words, and that the real strength came from never giving up, no matter how impossible things seemed. The Deathworlders were going home. But they had left the galaxy a different place. A place where perfection was no longer the goal, and where chaos was recognized as just another form of life finding its way through an uncertain universe.